What if the smartest army on the planet could be blinded in an instant? Imagine a force bound together by countless invisible threads, satellites, drones, encrypted radios, convinced it is invincible thanks to digital power and real-time awareness. This is the promise of the network-centric military. Every soldier, vehicle, and commander seamlessly linked in a web of information, able to sense, decide, and strike with breathtaking speed. Ukraine's military became the poster child for this vision. Armed with Western technology and thousands of Starlink satellite terminals, their battlefield was stitched to the heavens. Drones mapped the front, data flowed from orbit, and intelligence flickered across screens, giving them eyes that could peer for hundreds of kilometers. It looked like an army shielded behind an unbreakable digital wall. But what if this web is not a shield at all, but a hidden trap? What if, before a single shot is fired, the entire network goes silent, leaving elite units blind, cut off, and leaderless? The more a military depends on digital threads, the more complete its collapse when those threads snap. This is not just a distant scenario. If an enemy can sever the data veins binding a modern army, no number of tanks or missiles can make up for the loss. Without reliable command and control, even the most advanced force dissolves into isolated fragments, confused, vulnerable, and doomed to defeat. The stakes are immense. Information is the lifeblood of modern war, and whoever commands its flow can decide the outcome. So how did a power built on connectivity become so vulnerable? To understand the digital downfall, we must dissect the anatomy of military communications, and how the greatest strength of modern armies became their fatal flaw. One operation shattered the illusion of digital invulnerability. To uncover how, we need to examine the Russian playbook and the weaponization of the electromagnetic spectrum. Why did Ukraine's command, its very ability to fight, depend on satellites orbiting tens of thousands of kilometers overhead? Welcome to the digital backbone of 21st century warfare. On Ukraine's side, every crucial decision at the front was powered by a layered web, satellite internet, encrypted tactical radios, and live video streams from drones and surveillance aircraft. This was more than just clever improvisation. It was a leap into the future of combat, a nervous system connecting every soldier to the heart of command. Western allies supplied more than promises. They delivered Starlink satellite terminals, Harris and Sun tactical radios, and high-capacity mobile stations, cutting-edge tools that only a handful of armies ever deployed together in the field. Suddenly, even platoons on the most remote edge of the front were linked, in real time, with commanders hundreds of kilometers away. Picture the possibilities. Satellite imagery, drone feeds, surveillance data, all streaming live, analyzed and relayed in minutes from orbit to foxhole. Orders, reconnaissance, even supply updates raced through encrypted channels, eliminating the hours-long delays and fog that haunted battles of the past. Thousands of commercial satellite terminals threaded through the trenches. With internet everywhere, even small squads at the front enjoyed an information edge once reserved for generals. To appreciate the significance of this, consider the Second World War, when commanders relied on unreliable telephone lines or runners who might take hours or never arrive. In the Normandy landings, for instance, breakdowns in communication led to confusion and friendly fire incidents. By contrast, Ukraine's soldiers could receive high-resolution satellite imagery in minutes, coordinate artillery strikes with pinpoint precision, and update logistics in real time. At first, this sprawling distributed system seemed almost untouchable. Its complexity and reach promised resilience. No single strike could sever every link. But within this very strength hid a lethal vulnerability: total dependence on digital signals and satellite connectivity. If those signals vanished, if space-based links were lost, the entire command system could be crippled in seconds. Victory and defeat no longer rested mainly on firepower or armor, but on the silent, invisible flow of data. When every order, every warning, every piece of battlefield intelligence rides on these connections, one break can threaten not just efficiency, but survival itself. But what if the enemy saw this not as a shield, but as a target? What if, instead of attacking the network at the edges, they struck at its very core, the nervous system itself? Ukraine's digital dominance would soon face its greatest test. The Russian Eclipse operation was about to change everything. Could an army's lifeline transform into its deadliest trap overnight? For Ukraine, this was no idle thought experiment. It was an impending nightmare, predicted in chilling detail by Russian intelligence long before a single shot rang out. In shadowed conference rooms, Russian planners studied Ukraine's mounting reliance on digital networks. They watched as satellite links, encrypted radios, and Starlink internet became the nervous system of Ukraine's military. What some hailed as unbreakable connectivity, Russian strategists marked as one vast, glittering bullseye. Their plan was christened with a name as dark as its purpose: Eclipse. This was no crude barrage. It was a symphony of precision, coordination, and scientific calculation, uniting generals, signals experts, and civilian mathematicians. Their mission: to map, probe, and exploit every digital thread, tying Ukrainian soldiers from muddy trenches to distant headquarters. Eclipse would strike in 3 interlocked phases, each designed to black out communications from the stars above to the blood-soaked ground below. First, Russia's most sophisticated electronic warfare gear would reach skyward, blinding Ukrainian satellites and surveillance aircraft, the eyes and ears of the modern battlefield. Next came direct assault. Frontline jamming would scramble radios and drone controls, suffocating orders and surveillance in a blizzard of static. Finally, the masterstroke, a sweeping outage of Starlink satellite internet. Overnight, commanders who once navigated by live feeds and digital maps would be cast into silence. The Russian arsenal was vast and battle-tested. Systems like Murmansk BN, Krasuka 4, and Borisoglebsk 2 targeted everything from NATO's covert command links to the GPS signal steering drones and artillery shells. Each system had been refined, upgraded, and positioned for devastating effect, poised to shatter the invisible web binding Ukraine's defense. This was not mere guesswork. In secretive laboratories, Russian mathematicians constructed digital twins of the battlefield on supercomputers, simulating every factor: terrain, weather, enemy tactics, even the grit of Ukrainian backup systems. Their models predicted, with unnerving certainty, that entire segments of the front could be plunged into digital night. The plan detailed not just what to strike, but precisely when, layering contingency upon contingency to keep the blackout seamless. To understand how devastating these systems can be, look no further than historical examples of electronic warfare. During Operation Desert Storm in the early 1990s, American forces used electronic jamming to disrupt Iraqi communications, but the technology then was primitive by today's standards. Now, with advanced algorithms and powerful directional antennas, Russia could localize and smother specific frequencies, rendering radios and satellites useless across wide swaths of the front. The true genius and terror of Eclipse was its objective. The aim was not outright destruction, but paralysis, to switch off the very brain of Ukraine's war machine. Even the most advanced Western armor and missiles become little more than expensive targets if they cannot receive orders, spot threats, or call for help. On this new battlefield, information is survival. A single severed link breeds vulnerability, confusion, and collapse. The stakes could hardly be higher. Success would mean neutralizing a modern army with the push of a button. But failure would risk exposing Russia's own secrets, inviting counterstrikes, and turning an audacious plan into a catastrophe. Yet strategy on paper is only the first battle. When the digital night finally swept across the front, what happened would test every theory, every algorithm, every nerve, on both sides. As the first signals faded and Ukrainian screens went dark, a new kind of warfare began, one where every second of silence could tip the balance. Would Ukraine adapt, or would the shadow of Eclipse prove absolute? What happens when an army is stripped of its senses? Can it even fight back, or does it stumble blindly into defeat? The Russian operation known as Eclipse provided a chilling answer. Within minutes, Ukrainian tactical networks, GPS guidance, and Starlink satellite terminals all went silent, one after another, across the lines. Entire brigades found themselves plunged into a digital abyss, cut off, unable to see, hear, or speak in the chaos of battle. Command centers flickered out. Officers scrambled to revive ancient field telephones, pressing cold receivers to their ears as radios spat nothing but static. Digital screens froze, messages evaporated, and the invisible web that once linked every soldier, drone, and armored vehicle simply ceased to exist. The devastation was clearest in towns like Novoselovka. Ukrainian armored columns, advancing moments before, ground to a halt. With no signals or orders, tanks and infantry were paralyzed, exposed and motionless, perfect targets for Russian artillery and drones. Soldiers, unsure whether to advance or retreat, could do neither. Russian units pressed the advantage with merciless precision. They struck isolated positions, exploiting every gap. Ukrainian troops, huddled in uncertainty and dread, could not mount a counterattack or even withdraw in good order. The pace of battle was no longer set by tactics, but by panic. But the real collapse ran deeper. Psychological warfare surged in on the heels of the blackout. Fake surrender messages appeared on hacked frequencies. Broadcasts seeded rumors of defeat. Above all, the silence from headquarters grew suffocating, every unanswered call a fresh blow to morale. Fear spread like wildfire. Some units surrendered without firing a shot. Others deserted, convinced they were abandoned. It was not just equipment or territory that was lost, but trust, discipline, and the will to resist. The very cohesion that binds an army together began to dissolve before any decisive engagement. To grasp how quickly morale can collapse, recall the Battle of France in 1940. French armies, though well-equipped, fell apart as communications failed and rumors of encirclement spread. Units surrendered en masse, not because of overwhelming force, but from the psychological shock of isolation and confusion. Eclipse triggered a similar panic, only with the modern twist of digital silence. This was not just a military setback. It was a glimpse of what future wars could become. Battles waged not for towns or resources, but for control over the invisible currents of information. The lesson was stark. Whoever dominates the ether can break even the strongest force without a single bullet. The aftermath forced both sides to confront an unsettling reality. Technological superiority is fragile, and the battle for information may decide wars before they truly begin. Imagine your army, or your business, forced to operate in utter silence. In today's hyper-connected world, a single, well-placed electronic attack can reduce the most advanced force to a confused, voiceless mass. The Eclipse operation proved a hard truth. Every added layer of digital complexity becomes a new point of fragility. Each connection is an opportunity for disruption. When the data flow halts, even the most sophisticated arsenal becomes nothing but costly dead weight. For years, NATO and its allies trusted information dominance as their ace. Yet this very dominance hides a fatal weakness. Break the data chain, erase orders, maps, targeting, and all those high-tech tools lose meaning in a heartbeat. Electronic warfare is no longer background noise. It is now a contested battlefield, requiring dedicated weapons, doctrines, and relentless adaptation. In this shifting electromagnetic arena, the fastest innovator holds the upper hand. What does true resilience demand? It means crafting redundant pathways, layering old-school analog radio with state-of-the-art, artificial intelligence-driven jamming defenses. Networks must be robust enough to endure not just a single strike, but a barrage of simultaneous assaults. Electromagnetic control is no longer optional. It is fundamental. Tomorrow's victories will go to those who master the ether. Tanks and missiles matter less than the capacity to coordinate, communicate, and command amid chaos. Otherwise, even the best-equipped force is left blind, mute, and frozen in the digital dark. Ukraine's ordeal stands as a global warning. Dependence on commercial and satellite systems breeds dangerous vulnerabilities. A skilled enemy can transform your greatest strengths into critical liabilities. When satellites blink out and radios fall silent, what remains? Failure to adapt puts more than battles at risk. It threatens critical infrastructure, national security, and public trust. The shockwaves will not stop at the front. They will cascade through every layer of society. Eclipse forced militaries worldwide to confront a new reality. The rules of war have changed, and those who ignore the lessons risk catastrophe. What if the next war arrives in utter silence? No warning, no explosions, just the sudden absence of every voice and signal. Will you be ready when the world goes dark? The true lesson of Eclipse is not about missiles or tanks, but about how swiftly technological superiority can become a deadly weakness. For years, we assumed that more connectivity meant unstoppable power, that layers of satellite links, encrypted radios, and real-time data would secure victory. But when every soldier, drone, and command post is bound by invisible digital threads, those threads can be cut. In a moment, the most advanced force on Earth can be left deaf, blind, and alone. The Russian Eclipse operation shattered the illusion of invincibility woven by networked warfare. Without firing a single shot, the electromagnetic spectrum became the true battlefield. The side most dependent on constant connection was the first to fall silent. Command chains unraveled. Orders vanished into static. High-tech war machines turned to cold, inert metal. Leaders unable to command. Soldiers isolated. Entire units paralyzed by confusion. This is not just a lesson for generals. Our world, from national security to daily life, is built on the promise of seamless digital integration. We trust that our networks will always be there, our devices always synchronized, our information always flowing. But Eclipse revealed that a sophisticated adversary can turn our greatest strengths into our deepest vulnerabilities. Ignore these lessons, and we risk sleepwalking into defeat, not just on battlefields, but in every arena where connectivity is power. The cost will not only be tactical, it could threaten national survival. Reputation, strategy, and security can be erased in the span of a single, deliberate blackout. So ask yourself, are your systems truly resilient, or just elaborate illusions of safety? What is your plan if the digital lights go out? It is no longer enough to have the best technology. You must be prepared for the day when the network fails, and only adaptability stands between you and disaster. The silence that followed Eclipse is a warning. It demands more than reflection. It demands urgent action. Challenge every assumption about digital superiority. Rebuild the foundations of real resilience. Because in tomorrow's wars, the first and last weapon may be control of the spectrum. Only those who can operate in darkness will survive when the lights finally go out. So what can be done to ensure survival in a world where the digital thread is so easily cut? History offers both caution and hope. In the Second World War, armies relied on runners, carrier pigeons, and coded signals flashed with lamps or flags. When radio silence was imposed, commanders would plan for hours or days of isolation, issuing detailed orders and fallback options in advance. In the Israeli-Arab wars of the 20th century, both sides learned to use low-tech methods to survive electronic jamming, dispatching messengers on motorcycles or burying landlines deep underground to avoid detection. During the Falklands War, British forces used encrypted burst transmissions, sending messages in milliseconds to minimize the window for Argentine interceptors. Modern militaries must blend these lessons with 21st century innovation. That means building multi-layered communication networks, combining satellites, radios, fiber optics, and even old-fashioned telephone lines. It means practicing for blackout scenarios, drilling soldiers to operate independently, improvise, and communicate with whatever tools remain. Practical steps to build resilience include hardening vital infrastructure against electronic attack. For example, headquarters can be shielded with Faraday cages, and key nodes can be buried or disguised. Drones and vehicles should be equipped with multiple navigation systems, combining GPS, inertial guidance, and even visual recognition to survive when signals are lost. Redundancy should be built into every level. Every unit should have backup maps, paper orders, and pre-arranged signals. Commanders must be trained to function autonomously if cut off, and cyber defenses must be tested relentlessly, with teams simulating attacks to find and seal weaknesses before real enemies do. Nations should also invest in rapid deployment repair teams, able to restore physical lines and replace destroyed equipment under fire. Civilian systems, such as mobile phone networks, can be repurposed in emergencies, but only if protocols and security are established in peacetime. Finally, the human factor must not be neglected. Soldiers, leaders, and civilians alike need psychological preparation for isolation and confusion. War games and crisis training can inoculate against panic, building the confidence to operate when the digital world goes dark. The story of Eclipse is a warning and a call to action. It is a reminder that no technology, however advanced, is invulnerable. The side that survives is not the one with the most data, but the one that can function without it. In tomorrow's wars, and in every corner of our interconnected world, true security lies in adaptability, redundancy, and the unyielding will to endure when the screens go black. Will you be ready when silence falls? The time to prepare is now.